It's winter, winter in America. Yes, and all of the healers have been killed, sent away. Yeah, but the people know it's winter, winter in America.
Good morning, America. Today is Wednesday, January 20th, 2020, and this is Urban Talk Radio 103.5 FM WNHA.LP, where you will hear conversation, information, education, inspiration, and motivation from the American urban perspective. I am your host, Kingsley Ossei, and my co-host, Shafiq Abdussabur. Joining
Morning.
us today will be our special guest, John Lewis, who appears to be here. Today on Urban Talk Radio, you could join the conversation on Facebook at Bold Minds and Twitter at Bold Minds. You can also stream this show on your smartphone or computer by logging on to newhavenindependent.org. You could also join me on my Facebook page, Kingsley, last name Ossei. Um, Today's topic of discussion will include for so long, why did America ignore right-wing white nationalist and white supremacist terrorism and while building walls and attacking Muslims? We will talk about the second impeachment of Donald J. Trump. We will get the law enforcement perspective on what went wrong at the Capitol insurrection and the coup attempt. The theme of today's inauguration is America's United, and together we will witness the peaceful transfer of power. There is an inauguration going on right now, a historical inauguration with the first African American biracial vice president. And then we will also talk about controversial pardons from Donald Trump. So, Shafiq, good morning, brother.
Good morning. The stock market is dropping rapidly right now. Stocks is dropping rapidly, but good morning.
Why they scared of Wall Street is scared of Joe Biden? Is that what's going on?
I don't know, man. I'm watching these stocks right now, so
Wall Street is paranoid.
Where we're at.
Wall Street is paranoid.
Bitcoin.
They know their tax card is about to be scrapped.
I don't know, man. Bitcoin is taking a massive dive right now. It's at 33,000. I think it was like around 30, 37 earlier this morning. It's at 33. It's diving. It's a straight. Listen, look, straight dive. That's Bitcoin. Straight dive. Okay. All right. Nevertheless, you're right. Last week we had January 6th. They're gonna mark it on the calendar. They're gonna mark it on the calendar as being probably one of the worst days in American history. But the day they're having the inauguration, and the irony is, I'm a big CNN watcher, and CNN normally has the tag going down showing how many COVID deaths there are and how many COVID infections there are. And what the worldwide count is. And apparently that information has not been up all week, pretty much. But we know the COVID cases are the highest. COVID deaths are the highest that they've ever been during the pandemic in the United States. And the cases are well over 4,000 a day. And they said that we still have our worst days in front of us. So even though many of us are glued to the TV, and I know a lot of African American and Black people are glued to the TV today, trying to see how this inauguration is going to play out and if there will be violence, we just got to keep in mind that this COVID virus is also very violent against our communities. We are losing people. People are dying at alarming rates. So we just want to keep that in mind. Brother John Lewis, good morning. Welcome to Urban Talk Radio. Our often returning guest. I see you in the car. You mobile today.
Yeah.
You mobile.
Yes.
You in the Benz or you inside the Benz or you inside the BMW?
It doesn't matter. I'm driving. How's everybody doing?
All right, man.
Good to see everybody today, man. Yeah, we got a historical moment going on. You're right. Whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, good to be on.
All right, so let's talk about it. Kingsley, let's talk about it. Bitcoin is still going down. I'm gonna let y'all know when they get to 30. I'm gonna freak out. Got too much money in this thing.
I think, well, let me just say, last Wednesday, it was, I don't know why those that pay attention to history, or those that are paying attention to all the little outbreaks here and there when it comes down to the racial tension and all of these other things, the disparity, even as you talked about the coronavirus and, the health condition of a lot of the African American or those people of color, based out of the injustice when it comes down to all the medical what's available to them. All of these things play a part in what we saw on Wednesday, when people don't want to relinquish their power and their position, and they will keep it by any means necessary.
Yeah. So
by
listen,
any means necessary.
So Pastor Lewis, I'm gonna ask you to do this. I think you got a bad signal, and it's jumping in and out. See if you could just locate and get us a really good signal, because
I'm almost there.
Oh, okay, because I don't want to lose the content. You be saying some powerful stuff. I taught you well. You've gotten a lot better at.
I can't wait to see you in person, Shafiq. Keep it up. I have another trade. I do other things for my hobby, so I can't wait to see you in person at the dojo.
No, listen. Yeah. No, man, I don't do no dojo stuff, man. I don't do no dojo stuff. I'm not playing around.
But did you hear what I was? Go ahead.
No, I kind of hear, but it was breaking up a little bit, and I know that sometimes when I listen to a show, I get frustrated if I can't hear it clear, and I don't want people that's listening to this. Oh, we can hear you much better, man. Yeah.
No, what I was saying is that, again, just kind of quickly, just Wednesday was, I don't know why everybody's surprised. It's just things that have been bubbling and things that have been shoved under, and like you said, something about the coronavirus, which of course our community is getting hit worse, according to what the statistics are, because of health conditions of our community, and because of poor health care and all of these other things, which are a result of why on Wednesday, the incident that happened of people that don't want to relinquish their power, and people that have been privileged and in positions of power and wanting to stay in power and making decisions based on what's best for them. By any means necessary, they want to stay in power. And so they just feel, go ahead.
Yeah, so in 1966, at a convention on the Medical Committee for Human Rights held in Chicago on March 1966, Martin Luther King Jr. declared, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health care is one of the most shocking and inhumane. This is what he said in 1966. Of all of the forms of inequality in America, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. 1966. And I found it really interesting the other day when I was listening to yesterday, when I listened to the folks say, well, if Martin Luther King was alive, what would he say about what's going on? And if Martin Luther King was alive, and everybody attributed, like if Martin Luther King was alive, he would say unity. And if all these Black leaders was alive, they would be disgusted. If he was alive.
Absolutely.
They would absolutely. Let me tell y'all something, people. And I'm not a famous person, okay? I'm just who I am. But should God intend for me to become a famous person, and I were to die, and 50 years from now, somebody would be watching this show, or 50 years from now, somebody would be like the Shafiq Abdussabur Center of Science or something like that. And they said, in some tragedy was happening. There was a real civil war. Half the black people in America died because they couldn't drink good water or something like that. And somebody said, well, if Shafiq Abdussabur was around today, what would he say? He would say unity. Hell no, I would not. If I was around 50 years from now, and 50 years from now, we are talking about the same thing we're talking about right now: inequality, injustice, police reform, affordable housing, better health care, get a bank loan, the inequality about your credit score being levied against you, massive student debt. If we're talking about the same thing 50 years from now,
what does
I'm
that
55.
say?
No, what I'm saying is, if we're talking about the same thing, know that I'm not okay with that. So where did we get this notion in America that our black leaders, such as a Martin Luther King, where I heard somebody said in the news, one of the news reports said, well, he died for the cause. No, he was murdered. He did not die for the cause. He was murdered, man.
But what
dying for the cause?
But
it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, dying for the cause. Dying for the cause is, you know what? We're running out of food and water, and I'm gonna have to go out here and walk to New Jersey from Connecticut. I don't know if I'm gonna make it, but I'm gonna try to get there, because if I can get there to the other person, they're gonna bring supplies. I die along the way. I died for the cause. But if I'm chilling home in my house and I'm talking to you, and somebody shoot me through the window and kill me because of what I'm saying.
But listen to what he listen.
Shafiq, you're wrong. Shafiq, you're wrong, because he stood for something, and whatever he stood for, he was targeted for it. So he died for a cause.
Right.
But he got murdered for the cause.
No, he got murdered for the cause. He died
He got
for the cause.
murdered for the cause.
He died for the cause because he put his life.
He got murdered
on
for the
line.
cause.
He put his life on the line.
He got murdered.
But wait, listen. But here's the thing. No, he got murdered because he started to challenge the powers that be and start to demand on them to do what is right. Now watch this. How could we ever think 50 years or 60 years later, after Dr. King or the leaders back then that were fighting for equality, when we got to force people that are empowered to look at us as human beings and look at us as a people that you could respect and give equality to, when they haven't been able. Number one, I got to force you to do it. It's not in your heart to do it. And however, we'll do what we can for you. Now, here we are 50 years later, still asking the same people or those that are in power, but maybe they've done a little bit better, but we as a people have not been able to galvanize and to put ourselves in a position that becomes a threat. See, what Dr. King did and what people don't realize, when he challenged what they loved, which was their money, then things started to change. Then you started to get some traction. The problem with black folk, let me say this, I'm going to just say it plain. The problem with us, we still want to get on top of our pulpits, and we want to get on top of be able to speak to our congregation. I'm talking about the leaders. I'm a pastor too. So, but I'm talking about, we want to get on there, give them some sweet lullaby and give them some emotional excitement, but never galvanize them to become responsible and accountable as a people to what we do in our community, and as a people demand what is right for us. And if we do not get that, then it's time for us to take action. We have to hold our leaders accountable. Stop begging people to do for us what we can do for ourselves.
I agree with y'all. I'm just saying that I think we all agree. I'm just saying that Martin Luther King was murdered.
He was.
And I'm just saying, I can't speak on behalf of Martin Luther King. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think nobody can speak on behalf of my father died nearly 2 years ago. Can I, do I, you know, it's like if my father was here, he would say, I prefer for somebody else to be in that grave instead of me. I would rather be alive. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we got this weird thing that we do in America where we want to try to speak on behalf of dead people. But what I'm saying is to speak on behalf of a person that was murdered, you're reaching right now because Martin Luther King was not even in the prime of his life. He was just really kind of getting started, right? But we know that if we look back and look at the transition of history, people like Martin Luther King would have likely become the first Black president. That's a reality. Look at what happened with Nelson Mandela. He went to prison and after 20 years got out under P.T. Botha and he became president and totally transformed South Africa. So when we look at that transition of Nelson Mandela, and then we look at a Martin Luther King who was assassinated, which is murder, and we see where we are as a country now, and we see where we've come in 50 years with President Obama being brought in as president. Now you have Kamala Harris as a vice president. I mean, we're still at what, Kingsley, 54 years, roughly around 54 years of civil rights.
Just even listen to that. We're applauding the fact that we got a Black president. How many presidents have there been? Here we are applauding the
46.
fact that we got,
We have 46. We got one out of 46.
I'm just saying, sir.
I'm just saying you got one.
Right, but all I'm saying, look at us.
What would Abraham Lincoln say if he was here today?
Right. I mean, but
would Abraham Lincoln say, "Hey, you got one"?
But my point is that we as a people, as a human race of people, let us really take a real assessment. And I say this to our leaders, our influential people. Dr. King was very influential. Now, what we got to also realize, sir, the principle he stood for, he thought it was worth giving up his life. Do we have anybody today that's willing to stand before the powers that be and challenge them on the inequality and the injustice? No, sir. Because all we got to do
I would disagree. I would disagree. I'll be honest with you.
John Lewis was the last one we had.
No, I would disagree.
John Lewis.
No, I would disagree.
I'm still here.
Now you, John Lewis. Rep John Lewis.
But I would disagree.
The last one we had.
I would say that all of those young people of all different races that we saw taken to the streets throughout 2020, and I will be very, very specific and I'm not talking about the convoluted conversation of Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all this other different stuff, because that's a whole nother show. But the reality is we can see the people that was burning down things, and many of those people were not African-American or Black faces.
That's
Let's be clear about that. If anybody disagree, go back and watch all of the tapes, you'll see them. But the balance of the people that took the streets out there, those young Black people, those young white youth and people, those people were emulating in those marches that did not have the violence. They truly emulated the continuation of what you call a Kingian philosophy.
Yes.
To have educated me to understand. So I would say, do we have people willing to stand up? Absolutely. All of those people stood up. Many of them got arrested. Some of them got pepper sprayed. Some of them even got, look at the people at Charlottesville that did the Charlottesville march. They were very peaceful. They was in there minding their own business, and the dude came by and plowed them down and killed a girl with the cars up. So I would say, yes, we do have people out there.
And however, we got to pave the way for them, Shafiq, and for these young people. What I'm saying to you is that we have leaders that got their foot on their neck, and they will not allow these young people to really take a pivotal position. We are not grooming our young people to be able to really walk in these positions. We have to allow that to happen. It's uncomfortable. Let me say this to you. And I say this to a lot of my colleagues. I got great white allies. I got great Jewish friends. I got all of that. However, they do understand when I talk about Black unity, will appear to be separation. In other words, we as a people have never unified together. In other words, I invite you to my house. I'm having a family meeting. Now, if I have a family meeting, it doesn't mean I don't like you or I have something against you. That just means I'm having a family meeting amongst my family. If you go to a Jewish home, you ain't going to go into their Jewish family meeting. You go to an Italian home, you're not going to go into the Italian home meeting. We as a people, whenever we want to have a family meeting, they call that reverse racism. They call that separation. And that's what we got to stop catering to we have some real issues that are generational, that we have to cater to, that we have to nourish. And it's only going to be when we're able to start to really make ourselves healthy. We have to become a power base as a people, that they have to understand. We ain't begging you to respect us. If you can't respect us, then we'll remove ourselves from doing any business with you, and we'll carry on to do it for ourselves. That's what it's, listen, whether we want to choose to do it or not, can I just say to you, sir, it's moving in that direction by default, not by choice, because they keep on pushing back on what we say we need or what should be right. They keep giving the pushback, and by default, these young people, these other individuals who may not be a Dr. King philosopher, follow the philosophy of Dr. King, the Black militia, you got people rising up, man. And what I'm saying, if we do not start to really speak and have real conversation, you will have a bloodbath. Because right then on January 6th, 1776, the lady said, we're fighting for our nation. We're fighting as if, like 1770, she said that we the people are fighting for our country or whatever. Well, back then we wasn't as a people considered a people. So you fighting for white establishment. You're not fighting for the universal principle of mankind. That's what they were there fighting for. So what I'm saying, we are a wounded people. And I'm talking about as a whole. White, Black, Chinese, whoever has been in this nation, we are a wounded people, and we need some healing. And that healing sometimes comes from us being able to administer to one another, and then also having real conversation that's going to be uncomfortable, that's going to put tears in your eyes, that might turn your face red, that might have your nose sweating, but it's time to have real gut conversation. It's not always about trying to just push policy and procedure, because you force somebody to do something that is not in their heart. An opportunity is going to come for them not to do it no more. Dr. King did well, but he didn't. The hearts of the people didn't want to do it. White folk didn't want to change the laws back then, but it was his hand. Their hands were forced, and that's why you still see the sprinkling of these things today.
This is the Urban Talk Radio 103.5 FM WNHA.LP. I am your host, Kingsley, Ossei, and co-host Shafiq Abdussabur with special guest John Lewis. And I am going to be correct.
Get my head to the screen.
Abdussabur. And if you are just joining us today
back and
on
forth.
Urban Talk Radio, you can join the conversation on Facebook at Bold Minds and Twitter at Bold Minds. And you can also stream this show on your smartphone or computer by logging on to newhavenindependent.org. And you could also join my Facebook page at Kingsley Ossei. And why, Shafiq, you wasn't here last week, so we haven't really done a show together since the insurrection.
I was in a bunker, man. I was in a bunker, dog. I was in a bunker.
We spoke over the phone, but we didn't really do a show about it. We got to talk about the law enforcement piece to what happened. We got to talk, Harry always say, I like to talk about racism, and it makes me racist. I like to talk about divisiveness, and it makes me divisive. But everything that I'm against is exactly what happened on Wednesday. What happened on Wednesday have everything to do with race. And we got to talk about that, because what these people were, my fellow John Lewis said that these people felt entitled to power, which is very true. But the real core behind, and besides them being entitled to power, is the cult. The cult was all about race, because because what they were objecting to were states and constituents, which was black constituents, where the votes came from. And if you look at the crowd of the people that were out there, not protesting, but rioting and whatever else it is that they were doing as domestic terrorism, it's a bunch of white folks. We cannot discount that. So, and then we also got to talk about religion. These people were doing all this evilness in the name of religion.
Yes.
So these three pieces, we cannot ignore how religion is tied into politics, into what they're doing. The law enforcement piece, how did they miss the ball? Was it, really ignored because we got a Black Lives Matter protest, and then we got this we can't even call protest. And when we kept talking about it, they're like, nah, you guys like to make everything about racism.
It's white privilege.
All right. Now, ever since Trump took over, we've been talking about there's a white nationalist and white supremacists in the White House. We've been talking about it for decades, that there's white supremacists in the police force, and that's been ignored. I've been talking about it that Steve Bannon and Steve Miller were the two driving forces of Trump's policies in the White House. These two people, names right here, are white nationalists and white supremacists. Not debatable. And we see how it all ended. So we cannot ignore this. So Shafiq, let's talk about race, how race is tied into all this, and how the hoodies from this KKK or whatever names you have it, how these hoodies is completely off, and now we are in the pick a side type of situation right now.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Well, let me pull up a document. So, today I was thinking about when we did this show, I was like, can we get somebody on that's an expert that could talk about this topic? And I was trying to think of other officers.
Because of the inauguration, it was hard getting, people to come on the show.
Yeah.
But
after I thought about it, I said, you know what? I can actually speak to this topic because, it was, I'm just going back, in 2007, I was picked by White House to go to a place in the country under Homeland Security and actually work on a project that they call counter-violent extremism in the United States. And they had started actually working on this project in 2011, looking at the radicalization and the risk of radicalization of people in America that would become domestic terrorists and would be the greatest threat to American sovereignty. So this was being worked on in 2011. This is not anything new. This is not anything new to law enforcement. Law enforcement at the federal level has been well aware that this is a problem. And like I said, I was called in under the Obama administration, where I worked pretty intently with the Department of Homeland Security directors around this stuff. And, one of the defaults, which I can't have a big conversation about this, but I'll share what I can. But one of the defaults to this whole project was, when we discussed this, a lot of the conversation was very heavy around Islamic radicalization, terms like Islamists, jihadists, and all of these different things. Now, the quintessential common tag there was that all these people were brown, if you will. And so it's easy to focus, demonize, dehumanize, and put a military target face on a brown person because it's always easy. It doesn't look like you. It's always easy to do that. I mean, and that's part of one of the rules of engaging in, war engagement. War engagement is first you have to dehumanize your target. You have to make your target subpar to who you are because it will make it a lot easier for you to levy force against that individual, which is why injustice and inequality when it comes through the lens of police officers ends up in the death of unarmed Black and Hispanic men and women, right? Because I don't see you at my level. So it's a lot easier for me to use force quicker or in a harsher way because you're not like me. You're not part of me. I don't relate to you and you're not on my level, right? And that's why it's also easier for that to happen amongst a very large population of poor people in America because many police officers and law enforcement officers are not of that poor class. They're of a different class. So that's a different conversation. But in terms of the violence, the domestic terrorism, they called it CVE, counter violent extremists. So they were trying to counter the violent extremists. They knew they existed. It was I was recruited to help create a plan to identify them. Like, hey, there they are, and we want to talk to them and not have them go to the other side. And so in 2016, there was a conversation amongst top officials, and the conversations was this pretty much, that the most and greatest threat to America in the future to come were young white males who were home in the privacy of their home being radicalized on YouTube by radical information, whether it be through ISIS, extremist groups, nationalism, and all. And then to say things like white nationalists or say white supremacists, it was very, very taboo. And I'm pretty sure it is very still taboo in many law enforcement circles. So when we saw what we saw in 2000, and I was actually out doing some things, and my wife frantically texted me, oh my God, they just stormed the Capitol. And I said to myself, they late. We expected this to happen long before now. We've been working on this since 2011. So for the public looking at it going, it's 2021, and listen, it's late. It's late, man. It's late. And this thing is real, and it's out of the box. And we're watching it unfold in a real way now. We're watching National Guards who are being flagged and saying that, listen, I say this, in 1998, I was a detective. I went to a school called the New Jersey National Gang Association. It is like one of the largest gang network, policing networks like in the country. I don't know what the status of it is now, but in 1998 it was. You go for a whole week, went to New Jersey. They had top gang officials coming in from LA and everywhere. And you know what the conversation was in one of the workshops? Gangs in the military. Bloods, Crips, white nationalists, Nazis. They had photos of people in the military active where they painted white nationalists up on their tank, and so their whole unit was like a white nationalist unit, and they would get all their people transferred here. Same thing with the Bloods, same thing with the Crips. And then what they focused on, they left it at that. What they focused on in the conference was, and this is how the gangs are so dangerous, the Crips and the Bloods, is because when the guys get out of the military, they got military training, and then they train the Crips, and then they train the Bloods, and that's why when you go up against them, you got to be careful. Nobody talked about the white nationalists thing, that they had the same ability to do that because they were off the radar. 1998.
Yes.
And it's 2021, and they're saying, oops, we have white supremacists inside the middle. You think? and now they're screening, National Guards. And they're like, the guy we don't understand, he has a high level of security clearance.
They're screaming National Guards, but are they screaming the congressman?
No, but hear this out. They're screaming National Guard guy, one of them, and they said he has a high security clearance, but we have determined that he's involved in white nationalism. How did they determine that? Because on his Facebook post, he was posting all the, really? So what kind of system do y'all have in the military where a dude could be like a part of almost anything, and the general public is seeing like, yo, this dude is whack, but they can't, listen, they can't, they're not identifying it. Here's the reality of it. They're not identifying it because they don't want to identify it.
But
they're not dealing with it because they don't want to deal with it.
Shafiq, so
how close, so by you saying that right there, in reality, sir, by them not wanting to identify it, that means that it goes high up because it's going to expose some people. Because you can't get that stuff in except that it's at the top. There's some agreement somewhere.
Right. So here's what I would say. I would so as Kingsley would say, we're not going to talk about conspiracy on this team.
No,
we don't do on those. This team, we're not going to talk about conspiracy on this team. But yes. This is what we're going to do, right? This I can speak like this because I'm piece of people. Here's the deal. Here's a problem that I see right now, and I'm going to be real straight up about this thing with the police. You know, if somebody said, Shafiq, if President Biden called you right now and asked you to come to the White House and serve in a White House position and address issues dealing with law enforcement, what would you do? The first thing I would do is I would create a national screening process for every single law enforcement officer in the United States. If you carry a firearm, if you carry a firearm and you're under the Constitution and you have the right to take somebody's life, you are going to be under a new screening process. We're screening you, right? That's number one. If you are in the military, you need to be screened. Now, here's a question. Here's a problem if you create such a thing. What happens when you start screening people and you do find and you start firing them? You would, if you did it, you could potentially destabilize the entire security network. Because here's the deal. You might have a person that's a white supremacist. You might have a person that's got some, let's just say, maybe they got some hard black militant views. When they're a police officer or under law enforcement, you've got them somewhat in the cage, somewhat still in the cage. If you kick them out of that cage, they go off the radar. How do you deal with them and how do you control them now? Now, I like to believe this. We have enough technology in America where we can track people. We got enough technology in America where we can follow people. But one thing is for sure, we will not survive American democracy moving forward like this, because one of the greatest cornerstones, I believe in this, I put my life on this. There's two major cornerstones in any society, and there's two major cornerstones in our society in order to make this thing work. It's community safety and public trust. If you don't have community safety, if people don't feel safe to go outside, because they're going to get shot by a white supremacist at the store, a lone wolf, as they say now. Lone wolf is now going to be out there shooting people. People don't feel safe because they're walking out their house or their kid is going someplace and they're in an urban neighborhood and they think they're going to get killed by another black or Hispanic person, or you're going to get robbed or your wife's going to get raped. People don't feel safe. They don't come outside. You can't get a community cohesion and people working together. On the other side, if the very people who don't feel safe have to rely on other people to keep them safe, and they don't trust those other people, or they don't trust that system to keep them safe,
that's right,
then there is no continuity of safety and no continuity of trust. So I'm not going to claim to have the entire answer, but I will say that if the United States is very serious, the President Biden come out serious,
what's the difference between the people serving who were scrutinized and flagged and our Congress people who are all tied to QAnon? What's the difference?
I mean, well, I think what you're going to see.
What's the difference between those two?
But I don't know that. I think there's a difference, but I'll let you.
What is the difference? Somebody tell me the difference.
But let me say this to you: the Congress people, those that are in those positions, that the other law, because law enforcement carries out the will of these individuals. Their orders are coming from the top.
That's
so when you got people that are positioned in those particular places, here's what I like to say. It's very few of them that you're going to be able to really bring some kind of some kind of a charge or exposure to, because they're very well protected. They got ties, family members that go real deep. I know we don't want to deal with the conspiracy theory, but it goes deep. Here's the thing I like to suggest, even along with what Shafiq is saying. So how do we move forward? I believe right now, and again, we're dealing with white supremacy, we're dealing with white privilege, we're dealing with injustice with blacks and health despair, all of this. But the condition that this world is in right now is very pivotal. What I mean by that, yes, there's a lot of wrong going on, but there's a lot of people that are being impacted in their heart that have been a part of the wrong, that right now really want to try to do something that's right. See, nobody wants a bloodbath. Nobody wants to live in a war zone where the potential of everything going left and then their lives, just walking down the street, is threatened, like Shafiq said, just out there, and now the potential of them dying. So what I'm saying is that there has to be, again, conversation. Yeah, I know it might sound minimal. It might not sound like a great strategic plan, but I just believe if we get the right people in the right place and we start to have the right conversation, I think that we'll start to see where we can start to navigate and really institute the necessary change. I'm talking about even with the people at the top. Let's stop trying to attack or go at them per se, but let them understand we know and understand what's going on. But here's the opportunity for all of us now to move forward. Even when it comes down to KKK, I want us as African Americans, those people of color, I want us to understand something. Here you got a white society that everything that they have established, again, has been by privilege. This is what's being said. It's been passed on. It doesn't mean you qualify, but your uncle is in the position. Don't worry about it. I'm going to call. He'll get you in. Or it's been, the baton's been passed on. Or there's been some manipulation and that's been done that helps you get in position. Who wants to be connected to that? Who wants to raise their hand and say, hey, everything we got has not been done the right way, but we're here anyway? Who wants to be connected to that? We have to understand them fighting not to be those that are exposed, those that have to now own up to that. These people right now that are fighting, the privilege doesn't mean that you had knowledge. Privilege means you benefited from it also. So why would I want to be connected to what we know that is wrong? All I'm saying to us as people that are in the position that we are, people that are at the tail end and victims of what's happening, I believe that we can administer the right conversation and the right opportunity for things to change. We got to think about that, but we first, again, have to understand the power of our unity. We got to understand it's not about separating from whites. It's about us unifying for the first time in our lives and understanding the value of our unity that will now challenge them and let them understand we come with a power base. We come with a power base. So all of this right here, what we're dealing with, really could be addressed in a better fashion if we understand the value of ourselves and stop asking other people the value. I heard something, and I'm going to end on this. I feel like I'm preaching, but I'm not. But listen, I'm going to end on this.
Preaching.
No, Netanyahu.
Okay to preach.
They say you never give pastors the mic, right?
But whatever, man. Listen, Netanyahu said something a couple years ago. I can't remember what year it was, but about the Palestinians. One of the agreements is that they will accept Israel as a people or as who they are. How you gonna force people to do that? How you gonna make that one of the agreements as far as them moving on? See, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that want to implement something based on what they feel that you have to agree with when it's not. You can't force nobody to do that. So we got to be mindful about the things that we are agreeing with, things that we're coming in agreement with. We must be mindful of that. We got to really be conscious of that. I feel for my white brothers and sisters who are connected to this tyranny. Those we got good white and other people of cultures. They're great. The Indians. We got so many nationalities. People are great. And I feel for especially the white ones right now that are connected to some of this. However, we as a people of color, as victims, we have to realize our power right now that we have to bring everything and to make sense and to
Shafiq,
and bring
so
solution.
This is my question to any listener that happen to be. I don't think we got any Trump supporter listeners, except for Harry back there.
That ain't right.
Harry, my man, though. I mean, I just want to know if they will accept that they have been duped, because it started off with building a wall and Mexico is going to pay for the wall. And this wall was supposed to keep the rapists and the terrorism and the Muslims and whoever else that's trying to come into the country. And now here we are. We've been saying it all along that the terrorism issue that we have in this country is domestic terrorists. And for the past 4 years, every time there was any type of shooting, whether it was in the church, whether it was in the school, whether it was in the mall, we watch them play with the language for calling it what it is. Are they going to call it domestic terrorism? We waited, and they never did. So why now, Shafiq? Why now? Why are they finally using the language domestic terrorism? Why now?
So here's just a note. I just did I just lose it? I actually wrote I published a article last week, and I knew that some people may not be familiar. So here's the deal. This is according to the FBI, and this meets the criterion of domestic terrorism. And this is off of their website. It is involving acts that domestic terrorism means activities that involve acts dangerous to human life, that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States, appear to be intended to intimidate or coerce the civil population, to influence policy of government by intimidation or coercion, to affect the conduct of government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, occurring primarily within the territory jurisdiction of the United States. This is the definition of domestic terrorism under the FBI, and Homeland Security calls it violent extremism. Here's the reality of it. That's the definition, but that's not the crime. So we have as a country and as a law enforcement based country, we have defined what the problem is, but we didn't make it a crime. So now what you're going to be seeing is these people are getting charged with things like trespass, and they're getting charged with, unlawfully being in a building. No one's getting charged with like attempted sedition or treason or like insurgency actually being like a crime, if I'm following this properly. My feeling was, I was like, dude, they should be treated as enemy combatants. They should even be going to jail, bro. Send them to.
Hey, Shafiq, I got a question for you.
As
law enforcement, I got a question. Wait, I got a question. Now, we talking about them climbing the walls, going into the building, sir. Now, from my conversation, I believe that any time that there is a life law, whether it was done by law enforcement as protecting from themselves or those individuals, even though the law enforcement might have killed the individual, the person that incited that or the people that were running that, they would be charged with that murder.
But what could happen, and which I found like really interesting, and I know it's a long shot because normally the Justice Department does not like to deal in marginal cases. Normally the record is Justice Department wants to make sure that their cases they're winning, and sometimes you will find even in law enforcement, like at the municipal level, somebody go, well, this happened, and you should charge everybody. And they go, nah, you just want to get where you can win the case. And it might be difficult because of all the surveillance they got to get for it, but I just use the incidents where the officer was beat with the fire extinguisher. Like technically, if there's 10 people around him when he's beat with that fire extinguisher, like all 10 of those people should get charged with murder. Because you were there, you were in the proximity when this happened. But because this is like such a newer component of what's going on, it is, and because there was no preparation for this stuff, this is why we start seeing these things. Here, give another example. Recently,
We got
We've
six
had death
minutes.
threats on
We
some
got
of our.
6 minutes.
I'll give you an
Good.
example. We've had some death threats on some of our Connecticut officials, and Connecticut does not have a domestic terrorism law, right? So if I'm running, if I'm a state rep or a senator or a mayor or something, and I'm doing my job, and somebody threatens to kill me and my family, if they kill me or they attempt to kill me, it's just regular attempted assault with a firearm or whatever they tried to kill me with. In order to make this thing kind of work nationwide as we're trying to unravel this, we're going to need states like Connecticut to create a domestic terrorism law for the state. If I'm an elected official
Now
and you coming at me because I'm an elected official.
You mentioned two things in what you said. You said mass destruction. What else do we need? It's mass destruction. It falls into domestic into terrorism. You know.
Well, mass destruction is more like it's more like the Oklahoma City bombing. You blow up a whole building. That's the mass destruction.
My next thing to have something to do with the charges is, do you think even questioning as to why this Black Lives Matter issues about black men being shot and cops running away clean and whatnot, do you think this new attorney general will make a difference, even reversing some of these, not reversing some of these charges, but bringing some real charges as to the crime that these people committed versus this little misdemeanor and disorderly conduct? You ran into the Capitol where you didn't have no permission to be. You didn't have any clearance. That is not no misdemeanor stuff. I don't see that as being misdemeanor.
Yeah.
When people were killed in there in a federal building.
Yeah, I think you're going to see people arrested.
I don't see that as a disorderly conduct.
Yeah. I think you're going to see a lot of people continue to get arrested. I think this is going to be something that's going to take place over the next 3 years, to be honest with you. I think it's definitely, we're in this thing for about the next 10 years. And in my personal assessment, I have a grandbaby that is 8 months. I would have thought that she would not deal with this in her lifetime. She'll deal with this in her lifetime. This is another 50-year history for Black people. We in this thing for another 50 years. And part of the reason is, one of the worst things that I saw that happen on January 6th for America, one of the worst things that happened outside of the loss of life, but one of the worst things that happened was the majority of all kids are home. The majority of all young people in college are home. And these young people, these teenagers, these 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds people, they're watching this on the news. They're watching this in a 24-hour real time. And they're going to be influenced and conflicted by what they see. They're going to form their teenage opinions, their preteen opinions, their young adult opinions about what they see. No one wants to be on the losing side of anything. And our society now has become one big confused parent on a new generation of society of young people. So the impact and the effects of what really happened on the January 6th is not what's happening right now. It's what's going to happen in the future when those young people start to grow up, when those young adults start to go into their professions and take offices and figure out how they are going to be influenced or not by all these things that still exist. Because, hey, let's be real. We all say in the Black community, if we be patient, racism will die off, because it's really a generational thing of older people who were racist, who have taught some people. So when their grandfathers and great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, when they get out of the way, we can move on with a better America. Well, you know what they just did? It just fuel injected the next generation.
I would like to wrap up this show. Yes, Biden is officially the United States president. I would like to wrap up this show on how little. I mean, I wish I had a Trump supporter that can tell me why, if right now Trump should deserve another 4 years, as much as he have belittled himself. I mean, this man went. I didn't know losers have celebration party to outshine the winner. I didn't know that. I didn't know that in any sports. I didn't know. I didn't know there was any such thing.
The question is, Kingsley. Here's the question, King. Let's keep it real, because you're a hip hop dude. Lil Wayne.
And some of my hip hop
Lil
dudes were
Wayne.
partying too.
Lil Wayne, Kodak Black. Yo, talk about it. That's what you need to be talking about. Kodak Black, Lil Wayne.
No. Actually, the co-founder of Death Row, Harry O, is pardoned. I mean, the pardon was for sale. Now I'm giving you conspiracy now. No, that ain't even no conspiracy. It was reported in the New York Times. They were getting $5 for those pardons.
Is Ice Cube going to get a show? Is Ice Cube going to get a show with Trump? They can have a new show.
Thanks for joining us, bro. Shafiq, wrap up, man.
Oh my God. Hey, Pastor. He don't want to talk about his hip hop boys. He don't want to say nothing about Lil Wayne.
We'll talk about it on the next show. Shafiq, go ahead, wrap up. Take us away.
All right, well, if you joined us today on Urban Talk Radio, 103.5 FM, WNHLP, we had our returning guest, Pastor John Lewis, co-host, host of the show, Kingsley Ossei, which I can say his name, but apparently he don't know how to say Abdussabur.
Abdussabur.
Who's the real African? Who's the real African? But anyway.
Abdussabur.
Dude, I got to smash him down. Urban Talk Radio airs every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Tune in, join us, be safe, bunker down, be vigilant. God bless America.
I could take you it easy.